The grasshoppers have basically quit eating. Thank God. Perhaps they are in diapause before they die of cold. Get it? By D. Nash.
Welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on 7.5 acres out in the country.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet, about 1/3 of an acre.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want you to love it too. Yeah.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Good morning, Dee.
Good morning, Carol.
How are you today?
You know, I am just plumb dandy. The weather's getting ready to change and we're supposed to get some rain, and I have my fall candle burning, got my iced tea next to me. Life is good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sunny day here. We did get some weather change, but it's going back to seasonably warm, I guess. Last Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we got close to 3 inches of rain, Dee. 3 inches of rain.
Wow.
And so since it rained all day Wednesday, that put into serious jeopardy my getting an X for that day for doing some gardening. So as usual, I adjusted my rules and said if you did anything at all in the rain, it counted. So I went out and I had 2 trial shrubs that Proven Winner sent me. And one of them is a smooth hydrangea called Invincible Garnetta. She grows to about 2.5 feet. And the other one is a mock orange called Illuminati Arch that grows to about 4 feet. And I plunked those in the ground in the rain. So I got my X. How about that?
You also, you taken out those junipers already?
Yeah,
so
I had the guys take that out. Yeah, I didn't have to dig.
Good idea.
The ground was ready. I just plugged in the plants. And then other than that, it's putter, 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 weed, 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 and mow.
Yeah, story of my life. Whew. Well, last week I had 4 garden coaching clients. That was a lot, and that's it for fall. But people can get on my wait list for spring. One of the reasons I closed the garden coaching thing for fall is it's hard to get plants now.
Yep.
And you're running out of time. So we can start talking in February and March, I've decided. And I thought I would do the tomatoes last week, take them out. But instead, there was a tomato left that was perfectly ripe, had no bug damage. What? Guess what I did with it?
You ate it.
Oh my gosh, I ate it. I ate the whole tomato all by myself. And then I planted pansies, snapdragons, mulched the front flower borders, and I've written a post about it, and it should be published by the time this drops. I also need to find an arborist to remove some trees that have died. I've lost like 5 more trees.
Really?
Yeah.
So
I think it was the cold.
I say there are arborists who know about trees, and then their guys will just cut down a dead tree for you. And sometimes you just need a guy to cut down a dead tree.
Yeah, I really just need a guy to cut down a dead tree. And I don't want to use Chainsaw Man that lives next door. So it'll have to be someone else.
I do have to tell you, my younger sister, she listens to the podcast.
Yes.
She's got some nasty Stella d'Oro daylilies that have been in the ground at her condo for 20 years that they don't look very good. And I said, we pull them out and plant something in the spring. And then she said, I listen to your podcast, Falls for Perennial Planting. So let's take them out now and plant them. Something else. Yeah, I got myself some work to do. It's all right. I got to come up with something smaller. It's a real small space. So I got to think about that.
Ooh, does catmint do well in your world, or is it too wet for it?
Catmint does great, and she has some calamint that I gave her that looks pretty good.
This one's the one I'm thinking of. I'm not saying you should plant it, but there's a new one on the market, or new to me, called Little Trudy, and it only gets about 1 foot high, and it's really cute and has really small blooms.
You know what? I wonder if those are the 2 that Darwin Perennials sent me to trial. I've checked that out, because if that's it, then those 2 will go over there. Yeah, there's
good
2.
Deal.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I do.
You're welcome.
I'm talking I've been listening to Wendell Berry books on tape. And I'm talking like I'm from Kentucky. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. Would Would you like me to do the first quote?
Because I'm laughing too hard.
Okay. I'd like to be a hummingbird. You see them every now and then. You don't see them everywhere. Shailene Woodley. And our flower for this week.
Flowers that attract hummingbirds.
Versus
hummingbird feeders. We are pro flowers and hummingbird feeders. They're a mess after a while. They're a lot of trouble. I know people really like first thing they do in the spring around here. It's at the same time April 15th, tax season. That's when people like rush to put out their feeders. The first hummingbirds have been found. Everybody put your feeder out. And I'm like, everybody plant your flowers.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of hummingbird feeders. A lot of our listeners and readers love them, though. I say, you know what, if you want to do that, that's great, I guess. But you're just feeding them pure sugar. And this whole topic came up because my sister-in-law, Maria, asked me why she had honeybees at her hummingbird feeder. And so I explained that at the end of the year, hummingbirds and honeybees need a lot of sugar, as do wasps. That's why you see wasps at the feeders this time of year too. I'd rather plant flowers. Ants get in those feeders. It's kind of gross.
It is. And the other thing I was going to say is there's a certain time in the fall when you have to take the feeders down to get those hummingbirds, on south. And I know when I went to the Wild Bird Unlimited last week, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago, she asked if I was using a hummingbird feeder. And I'm like, no. And I think she was going to tell me to take it down for fall.
She probably was, because you don't want to mess up their migration pattern. It's, we try to help creatures and sometimes we cause them more harm. I know that hummingbirds, the males leave at the beginning of October here or at the end of September, and the females and the children leave mid-October, because I did a little research on it. By then, my plants are done.
I guess here, back up 2 weeks. And so it would be early, mid-September, and then late September, they would leave here. But you wrote a most excellent post about some flowers that you can plant in Oklahoma to attract butterflies. And I looked it over, and I'd say all but one or two
can be grown where you
plant. Yes, in Indiana. So we're going to walk through some of these. We'll leave a link to this post because people can read it. But naturally attracting them by the flowers you plant, we think, is a much better way to go. Much easier, too, than messing with that sugar mixture and making it up. And never mind.
Yeah. And if you do use the sugar mixture, don't put the dye in it. It's not good for the birds. There's a lot of plants you can grow. And I have hummingbirds all the time in the summer here. So I know it works.
I have them.
So salvia. Do you want to start?
Salvia is the one that's the top of the list for me. And I get a lot of annual salvias. I'm not talking about the perennial salvias, which are fine, but they don't bloom forever. But no. I've had some salvias that one's called Black and Blue.
Yeah, which is perennial here.
Is it not perennial there?
No. Yeah, I think it's only zone 6B.
It's a container plant.
Okay, here it makes a big shrub.
I thought it was done, and I cut it back, and it just keeps reblooming. And then you'll see hummingbirds coming in and grabbing at it. Mm-hmm. So I think any salvia is a good hummingbird plant.
Salvia Wendy's Wish, which is for this year, for some reason, has bloomed all summer. Normally it blooms later in the summer, but it's bloomed most of summer this year. I don't know why. Maybe because we had rain. Any of the salvias that have the tubular flowers?
Yes.
Because that's really the key. They have long little beaks and they like tubular flowers.
And that tubular flowers, and I cannot lie, right? That's what they say.
Right, exactly. And what another weird behavioral thing you'll see if you have a lot of flowers that are tubular like that is you'll see bumblebees and carpenter bees stabbing the side of the flower and stealing nectar, which is really cool. And I photographed it many times and put it on the blog.
I actually have a video I did of my Nicotiana that shows the bee stabbing at the base of the flower to steal the nectar. And it's hilarious, but I think I posted that on YouTube. I'll put that link on there. It's fun to watch.
Okay, cool. It is fun to watch. I've sat in a gravel path and watched them for an hour before. They won't bother you. So the first
better and cheaper than Netflix.
True that. So coral honeysuckles, coral honeysuckles are one of the best plants that you can grow in an Oklahoma garden. Can you grow them up there or not?
I don't see people growing a lot of coral honeysuckle. I think that it is hardy enough. And it may be just that in my little limited world of a third of an acre, I don't grow coral honeysuckle. So it doesn't exist to me. But it is probably
hardy. Be. And it's a really pretty plant. Mine doesn't look pretty right now because it's also the larval host for sphinx moths, the clear winged ones, which name I can't think of right now. But anyway, it's a larval host for them. And so they've been eating it up, but it's starting to put out new leaves. I grow 2 different varieties of it. It is not invasive like Asian honeysuckle. It's a native plant.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up. I'm going to guess that it is hardy.
And then I talked about penstemon. I know that you can grow penstemons.
All kinds of penstemons.
I'm sure that crossvine is not hardy in your area because it's not fully hardy here. I lost it last winter.
I believe that it is root hardy here. So the issue that you would have is, would it grow enough to flower before the frost? And I actually have a crossvine that I attempted, and I don't want it anymore because it's kind of hidden behind some shrubs. I keep whacking it back and it keeps coming back. So I know it's root hardy.
Well, that's interesting. And it might be the reason that mine got frozen out. We had that terrible cold weather that came down for 2 weeks. And it was also planted in a place that is in the lower part of the garden where the weather hangs. That's something we could actually discuss more frequently, is that you have microclimates even within your climate. I know we've talked about it before. And so that may be why it wasn't, it says here on my blog post that it's hardy to USDA zone 6. So I would plant it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Do it again.
Bee balm.
Bee balm. Excellent plant. That's very hardy here. So many different varieties of bee balm now. So there are some nice dwarf varieties. In fact, there's a dwarf variety in my garden right now that I think, maybe that's a good plant for my sisters, because it doesn't get more than about, I'd say 18 inches if you were stretching.
Wow, I can't imagine a bee balm that small. All of mine are big and tall, but I have like Jacob. I can't talk today. Jacob Klein is one of my favorite ones. I think it's really pretty. It's scarlet and it attracts everybody. Everybody.
It's a little floppy here, but it's an good old fashioned bee balm.
What about Russian sage? I'm sure it's hardy there.
Yes, it is. In fact, it can be a bit of a thuggish spreader if you're not careful. In fact, my older sister said she's getting rid of all her Russian sage because it's growing everywhere. So she's been pulling it out. But that is also another very good one.
I like Russian sage here. It's you don't have to do anything with it plant, which is why I think it's gotten less popular over time. There are some cultivars of it in addition to the regular Russian sage, but I have only grown one of the cultivars. Several of my clients grow denim and lace, which is a proven winner's variety. It's short.
I'm sure that would be better.
It has really pretty leaves. It's a very pretty sage. And then hummingbird mint, which is Agostiki or Agastache, depending on how you pronounce it. And right now on that I can see those plants right out there, the Blue Fortune, and there was a big old butterfly on there.
Yeah, I have Blue Fortune out front, kind of by the sidewalk, which I'm sure there's people who don't like bees are like, why did the lady plant the bee plant right by the sidewalk? I don't know. To get you used to bees, because they don't bother you at all. No, that thing will be the last thing blooming. You'll still have just tiny little bits of flowers and the bees and butterflies. That'll be the last thing. And I have every once in a while, I'll see a hummingbird on it. That's a good one.
So you're the person who got me to plant Blue Fortune, because I'd never had any luck with Agostiki. And I was like, you said, try Blue Fortune. So I was at an Audubon plant show. It was a tour last year in Tulsa, and I bought 3 plants, and I liked it so much that I bought 3 more plants at the beginning of this year. And I recently ordered from High Country Gardens 3 more plants because I'm going to put them in another part of the garden.
I should get a commission on those, don't you think?
Yeah, you should. And not only that, it's probably my best plant of the year for pollinator plants this year. Everybody likes it.
Every pollinator likes it. Tall garden phlox is another good one.
tubular flowers. I mean, they don't look tubular because they're flat kind of, but they have a deep little place for the beak.
Yes.
One of the best plants, in my opinion, in the whole garden for
Really?
pollinators. For
Yeah.
my pollinators. Yeah.
Yeah. And get a name variety that is mildew resistant, because these can get kind of mildewy if you're not careful in selecting them.
And don't plant them in any shade. Some people plant them in partial shade here in Oklahoma. That's just asking for mildew. I'll be honest, I have a pass along that is mildew resistant. I don't know. I mean, it came out of Louisiana, which might be why it's mildew resistant, but it's a great one. It's pink. I have bright eyes. I have Gina, which is supposed to have more nectar. I haven't noticed that it's any more popular than any of the others. I have one called Cherry something. No pollinator ever visits it, and it's going out this year. In fact, I might dig it out today.
Yeah. To the compost bin it goes. If it's not going to do its job,
it's out of here.
It's out of here.
So coral bells, don't you think that's kind of a surprise?
It is kind of a surprise. I have
do you have a ton of coral bells?
Yeah, when you're talking about heuchera, I have a ton of it. I guess.
Haven't ever noticed, huh? But do yours have, they only like the ones with red flowers, like
I
firefly.
have some with red flowers in this one area. And so it is possible when I am not looking that hummingbirds have visited. It is quite possible.
It's supposed to be. And then, of course, we're back to salvias, which I love salvia's Wendy's Wish. And I try to make sure I get it every year. It's a little hard to find here, but occasionally I'm able to find it.
I have never seen it around these garden centers at all. Never.
Here's why I think you don't see it. Usually it takes a little while to flower and your season may be too short. By the way, there's a monarch right outside my window and she is on bluebird aster.
Really? That's lovely.
Yes, which is not a hummingbird plant. Anyway, those are some hummingbird plants, some hummingbird flowers. We would encourage you to plant flowers for hummingbirds. In fact, there's 2 monarchs out there. The migration is on, Carol.
I guess. I saw one earlier this morning out in the vegetable garden on the zinnias. I'm like, you got a long way to get to Mexico. You best be going on your way.
Yeah, it's going to get cold. I always want to say that to a lot of the birds and bees and such. I'm like, guys, you really need to hurry.
Yeah. It's that way. I should put a little sign in the garden that says, Mexico. That way. So they know which way to go. From the zinnias over the house.
Yeah, exactly. If you guys want to look up that oh my gosh, I cannot even talk today.
If they would like to see the blog post about the hummingbird plants, I will provide a link in the show notes.
That way you don't have to stop and start and take notes on all the stuff we just told you.
Yes, we didn't tell you anything that wasn't in that blog post because we're sort of double dipping.
It's okay. We wrote that blog post, so it's all right.
That is true. We didn't. You did. And it's very good.
So now we're going to talk about a fruit I don't eat.
I'll do the quote. To eat figs off the tree in the very early morning when they have been barely touched by the sun is one of the exquisite pleasures of the Mediterranean. That's by Elizabeth David, who wrote An Omelet and a Glass of Wine. And the good news is, in my garden, I can go eat a fig. I wouldn't call it a tree. I'd call it a very large shrub. But I can eat a fig when it's been barely touched by the sun because my figs are starting to ripen. And everybody wants to know, geez, Carol, for a lazy gardener, you mess around with figs?
I don't think they're that hard, are they?
Well, it just depends. I saw this article or YouTube or whatever about how people in cold climates like mine, they dig a great big trench and then they kind of fold the fig down into the trench and cover it up to protect it in the winter. And I'm like, You know what we got to say to that? That's a lot of work.
Yeah. Don't grow it. If it takes that much trouble, it doesn't need to live in your climate, but you don't do that. You just grow them.
No. And
where do you grow them?
I grow them straight in the ground in the vegetable garden. And the trick is 2 tricks. Pick the cold hardy varieties. And the 2 in my garden are Chicago hardy and brown turkey. Mm-hmm. And then pile the base up with leaves in the fall once things are really starting to, after you've had a killing frost and all. You're going to have leaves, pile them up on top of that thing, and then walk away. Let it go.
You must not get winds like we do in the middle of winter because all those leaves would blow away. You'd have to put a thing around the fig.
You could put a little fence
kind of deal. Yeah.
With, chicken wire or whatever and make a little fence around it. But I just, then in the spring, I cut everything back, not all the way back. And then I see where the green shoots are coming out. And then I cut the rest back and it comes up. And I have fig plants right now that are 8 feet tall. That's all
they grow.
Season's growth.
Right. They grow really fast. And we should point out they bloom on new wood and they fruit on new wood. So it doesn't matter that you cut them way, way back.
And the other thing that people will find very mysterious is, as you probably already know, you will never see the bloom on the fig because the bloom is inside the fruit. So the fruit forms and that bloom is inside there. Then gets into the whole horrible thing about, well, how is a flower that forms inside the fruit pollinated? And it's pollinated by little wasps that go up through the bottom and they pollinate it. And then a lot of times the wasp has used so much energy getting into the fig and pollinating it that it dies inside, which is why some very strict vegans will not eat figs because they think there's a dead wasp inside.
Well, that dead wasp is long gone by the time they're eating the fig. But,
the thing I always ask, because why not, is, so I'm growing figs in a climate where figs are not native. Are the wasp around here smart enough to go up in there to pollinate it?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Because it gets pollinated because you have figs.
Well, no, I mean, I think the fig would form without pollination. It's whether seed would form.
Oh, of course it would. Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I wrote a blog post about this because people say, how do you do figs? And one of our listeners over in Columbus, Ohio, has figs in great big containers that she has to haul in and out of a greenhouse. And a fig is a gigantic plant. And those things have got to weigh a ton.
Yeah.
So she was going to try one in the ground, not all 4, one, and then see what happened. Because I said, you got to check your variety. And her variety may not be hardy enough for zone 6A. Who knows?
Okay. Well, I grew figs one time. They didn't return. I don't like them very much. But here's my theory about why I don't like them very much. I think I've never had a truly ripe fig.
Oh, they're delicious. And here's the thing.
They must be good.
So of my 2 varieties, I have Chicago Hardy and Brown Turkey. And normally Chicago Hardy, the figs wouldn't ripen before frost. And once you get frost, you're done. And so now they're starting to ripen the same as the Brown Turkey. So I was able to put them on a plate and show you that the Chicago Hardy are not even half the size of Brown Turkey figs.
Huh.
And in my opinion, they don't have a very noticeable taste even. So if you're going to grow one, grow Brown Turkey.
Okay, good to know. And if you don't have the itch to grow figs, you can eat fig Newtons. And by the way, there's a really good GF gluten-free fig Newton out there. I occasionally buy it. Yeah. And these are good. And you can't even tell they're gluten-free at all. And I occasionally have one with tea. I don't buy them very often, but I love fig Newtons.
Well, actually. I'm about to have, I think, a very good fig harvest. So I do need to think about something to do with those figs other than not harvest them, which is always an option. But maybe I'll figure out something to make maybe I'll make fig jam or something.
So the name of the gluten-free fig Newton is by Pamela's Products, and it's called Figgies and Jammies, which I like the name immediately.
That is a cute name.
So if anybody wants one, that's the name of it if you're gluten-free, or if you have a gluten-free friend.
Or there's just fig Newtons.
Well, I mean, if you're not if you're gluten-free.
Not if you're gluten-free, but there are regular fig Newtons, which I don't get those very often because 1, I can't stop eating them. And 2, they're not very healthy.
No, they're not healthy at all. They're a cookie.
Oh, okay. Anyway, let us move on to our next quote, which is your turn.
Occasionally, the sunlight through the library windows would catch my eye, and I knew I should be out in that. I felt as if I had cut myself adrift from everything I love. James Rebanks. We are both really excited to make the acquaintance of James Rebanks, not in person, but through video and through his books.
Yes.
And the way this all came about is I was watching CBS Saturday Morning, and I never watch it, but the other day I turned it on and they had him on it. And it was just one of the best interviews I've watched in a long time. And I thought, I have got to read his new book, which is on our bookshelf, Pastoral Song.
Yes. And I read it. I got the book on Friday and I read it and told you yesterday I had finished it.
I read it in 2 days because I not only got it, I also got it on Audible and listened to it in the car because I had a lot of errands to do on Friday and Saturday. And I loved hearing his voice, which was nice too, because he's from the Lake District in England and he is a shepherd. And none of that sounds really interesting, but James Rebanks is a heck of a writer.
He is a heck of a writer. And I say that the book is divided into 3 sections. There's pastoral, which is his reminiscence about growing up on the farm of his grandfather and his father. And then progress, which talks about lots of problems with the way they've industrialized farming, both the crops and the animals. And then Utopia is the last third of the book. And he talks with hope about how people are returning, not necessarily to the old ways, but thinking about more sustainable ways to farm.
Yeah. And that's something we need to do in the United States too. A good indication of that is the fact that industrial farming totally changed how we grow food, and we grow so much food that we have an excess amount of food in the US for sure, and in some other countries. And in England after World War II, they didn't want to be dependent on other countries for their food sources. And so they changed the way they farmed and took a lot of ideas from the United States. And there's just some really good, clear-eyed explanation about how all this came about and how it changed the environment for insects, which changed the environment for birds, which changed the environment for animals, and how we treat farm animals. It just, everything changed. And the middle part of the book is quite sad. I shed some tears over it, actually. In fact, I texted you and I said, this book is making me cry. And because he was very smart. I mean, he showed you in the beginning what it was like with his grandfather, and our reminiscences with our grandparents are very important to us. So then when everything changes, it's very hard to deal with. But the ending of the book, the last third, is very hopeful.
Very, very hopeful. And so we'd recommend it to anybody to understand really what's going on in the agricultural world.
Plus, the writing is just so darn good.
Right. And, our hero, Wendell Berry, wrote on the cover, James Rebanks' story of his family's farm is just about perfect. It belongs with the finest writing of its kind. And the finest writing of its kind is Wendell Berry's, in my opinion.
Yes, it is. I mean, it really is. I mean, Wendell Berry's written a lot of stuff about this. And the very last acknowledgement in the book, because I read all the way to the end, even read the acknowledgements, the very last one is to Wendell Berry, who has become a good friend and mentor to James Rebanks. And I love what he says. He says he doesn't want to be famous. He just wants to be an ordinary person who lives an ordinary life, but it's not an ordinary life. It's really an extraordinary life.
It is.
And he's kind of an extraordinary person. And so I think you guys should read it. I give it 5 stars, and I never give books 5 stars.
Yeah, it's a 5-star. So read that quote that really struck you, because that is a great quote.
From his grandmother?
Yes.
The one about his grandmother? Okay.
Yes.
My grandmother was an expert at turning the things the farm grew, harvested, and reared into meals. Almost everything she cooked was homegrown, seasonal, and local. Meat, potatoes, vegetables, or fruit and berries were made into preserves and chutneys. There was the occasional orange or banana that had been bought, and a few packets of crisps were kept in the drinks cupboard, but otherwise plain traditional food was placed on the table to be eaten and enjoyed. Grandma never asked what we wanted. There wasn't a choice. Oh my gosh, it could be my grandmother. Even though she lived in town by then, she still made all this food and put it in her cabinet. And my grandmother made very plain food, but because it was all, she raised her own chickens, that food was exquisite. And part of this book and other stuff I've read has made me decide that I buy all my meat from local sources because we've got to support those farmers.
We do.
And
I got to find some local sources.
Yeah, I found local sources for pork and local sources for beef, and I'm working on local sources for chicken. And I ordered my turkey, and yeah, it costs more, but I can afford it, so I'm going to do it. And that's a point he points out in the book, is that people used to spend a lot more money on their food, but because of industrial farming, we can get food really cheap. Right. But the quality of chicken that you get at the Big W is not as good as a chicken that somebody raised and then slaughtered for you. There's no chicken like it.
That's true. And here, I remember I once went to a very fancy steakhouse and they had Amish raised chicken, and I got that instead of steak. Oh, it was delicious.
Oh, yeah, it is. Well, the other day,
hey, Dee,
we were at...
Here's the funny thing about that.
What?
I was with you. In Indianapolis.
Oh, was that when we were in that really good restaurant?
St. Elmo's Steakhouse. And I said, oh, farm raised Amish chicken. I'm trying that. And it was delicious because it had never been frozen. Had been, anyway. We need to move on, Dee.
Yeah, we do. We're chattering too long about this. So you do the next quote.
Big fat brown moths fluttered about when we moved the bales, and often ragged winged butterflies as well, like tattered jewels. Also a James Rebanks quote.
He had me at tattered jewels.
Tattered jewels. So you found our dirt this week, which is very good. We'll put a link to this story.
Yeah, we don't need to talk extensively about this story, but basically it's about combat veterans and butterflies. And there's a group of combat veterans that came back from the war, and they're building a preserve in California. And it's to help the Western monarchs, because the Western monarchs are in much worse shape than the ones that migrate through the center part of the country, partly because of the wildfires. That's one of the reasons a lot of their habitat's been destroyed. So these guys are putting habitat back, and then they are working on all sorts of projects. And it was all about how veterans have learned that when you go to war and you try to come back and integrate it into society, it's very difficult. But if you have something that you care about, that you're passionate about, it really helps.
Yes, it does. And this is a nonprofit organization called Guardian Grange, which aims to use nature to help veterans cope with trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other issues that come with transitioning back into civilian life. So we will include a link to that. It's a very good article. It'll give you a little bit of hope. It was a good article.
It is. It gives you a lot of hope. And also it once again points out that nature is really a balm to our souls.
It is. It is. So what rabbit holes, other than the James Rebanks rabbit hole did you go down this week?
I'm getting ready to take cuttings and bring plants into the greenhouse. I won't do it until next week when it cools off a little bit. But I was excited to see, I follow a guy named Kevin Lee Jacobs from A Garden in the House. And I started following him back when I used to force hyacinths in glass vases. And he really knows what he's doing about that. And so I learned to love his blog because he's a really good writer. He also does YouTube videos, Carol.
I'll have to look it up. I've never heard of him before.
Anyway, he has a post called How I Prepare Geraniums for Winter Bloom. And his tips are great. So if you like geraniums, zonal geraniums, which we've done a whole podcast on, these are great tips to bring them inside your house, because he doesn't have a greenhouse.
Which that's interesting. I saw the picture you sent. I'm going to look that up, which my neighbor emailed me last night, and he has a couple of pepper plants, and he struggled to get the seeds going last spring, and the seedlings. And he says, can I bring them inside to overwinter? And I'm like, well, you can try.
They need a lot of sunlight.
Well, I said, you need to cut them back, cut all the fruit off of them. Basically, you're going to try to get them to be semi-dormant. Don't overwater them. He wants to put them under lights. I think he's got a setup in his garage or something. So it's like, he's going to lose a little bit of time probably, but give it a whirl.
That just seems really odd for pepper plants.
I
But you know what? Everybody has their zen, and I'm not going to jump on his zen.
no,
If he
and
wants
these are
to
like
do it.
special peppers that he really loves. And anyway, so my rabbit hole is I'm back into my creatures and critters book because the Ohio State Master Gardeners, for some reason, would like me to do a keynote focusing on that. So I've
That's
really
awesome.
been between reading this pastoral song and then books by this Dave Goulson that I talked about last week, who's an entomologist or a biologist specialized in his insects. I've been thinking a lot more fondly about critters in the gardens, although I still hate when I run into, I can smell it before I see it, raccoon scat.
Yuck.
So I've been thinking a lot about the creatures and just being a little bit more zen about them as well. So that's my rabbit hole.
Which apparently the whole fall for us has been about creatures and critters. So it's very appropriate that you're doing this
Yes.
piece.
Yes. And it's going to be a very
Congratulations.
nice talk.
I wish. Is it a Zoom talk?
It's a Zoom talk.
Maybe I can come and listen. I don't know.
Maybe we'll see. I gotta practice it. You want me to practice it on you?
Yeah, practice it on me. That'd be fine.
Okay,
so our garden
commission.
commissions.
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to be busy a bit this week, so I probably won't get much done, but I'd like to take all of those tomatoes out of their pots, put the smart pots away in the barn empty so I can start afresh in spring. And I use the potting soil in some of my other raised beds because, the organic matter goes down, so your soil goes down. So this is a good way, a good use, as long as I don't plant tomatoes in those places.
True that. In my case, I've got some smart pots to empty out as well. I'm just going to keep weeding. I've got this area that is over by the one fence, and I wouldn't say it's wooded because not any part of my yard is wooded, but there's some really large shrubs and there's a lot of redbud seedlings and things. And I got to get in there. It's one of those, you got to put a hat on and long sleeves because I'm going to be crawling around under shrubs and stuff, trying to get these. Doesn't it sound fun?
No, not really.
Anyway, well, if it doesn't sound fun, let me just wrap this up by saying thank you for listening to the Garden Angelus. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us. Also hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything.
And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review. That helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your gardening friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
Yes, and be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites. And if you want to support us, use the affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on some of them, we earn a small commission. It costs you nothing.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the garden gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.